Dear Patriots, before the news starts, please subscribe to our patriotic channel by clicking the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up to this video. Don't forget to leave your opinion below in the comments section. Share the news on Facebook and Twitter so you friends see it. Thank you.
He makes my blood boil. Lib Eminem just had huge hissy fit because Trump is ignoring him. Grammy Award-winning, best-selling rapper Eminem is used to having people pay attention to him. He clearly enjoys being the center of attention, with fans cheering for him and doing whatever he wants. It must have come as a surprise then when liberal Eminem tried to insult Republican President Donald Trump with an offensive video and the president, who has far better things to do with his time, didn't care. Complained thin-skinned Eminem in an interview about Trump last month, "I feel like he's not paying attention to me. I was kind of waiting for him to say something, and for some reason, he didn't say anything." A month has passed, and Trump still has not responded in any way to the rapper's provocations, and it has made narcissist Eminem very angry. He said recently, "President Trump makes my blood boil. I can't even watch the news anymore because it makes me too stressed out. All jokes aside, all punchlines aside, I'm trying to get a message out there about him." In his spare time, fruitlessly waiting for Trump to talk to him, the 45-year-old has even come up with what he wants to say to the president if the president ever speaks to him. Said the musician about his lines for Trump, "I'm not going to give any away now, but I've got lines ready if he says something about me." He went on with his temper tantrum, saying, "At what point do you, a working class citizen, someone who's trying to make shit better for you and your family, think this guy who's never known struggle his entire fucking life, who avoided the military because of bone spurs, who says he's a billionaire, is really looking out for you? He's got people brainwashed. Do you think Eminem needs to get a life?" Huffington Post accuses Tim Scott of being Trump's prop because he's black. Scott hits back hard. Republican Senator Tim Scott has a pivotal role helping the GOP pass their tax cut. However, Huffington Post contributor Andy Ostroy only cared about one thing: that Tim Scott was black. Tim Scott wrote a tweet showing off his tax reform speech with President Trump. #Tax reform is a win for hardworking American families. This was a once-in-a-generation opportunity, and for the American people the proof will be in their paychecks next year, he tweeted. Andy Ostroy was furious over this because Senator Scott is black. What a shocker. There's one black person there and sure enough they have him standing right next to the mic like a manipulated prop. Way to go at Senator Tim Scott, tweeted Ostroy. Tim Scott had the perfect comeback. Probably because I helped write the bill for the past year, have multiple provisions included, got multiple senators on board over the last week and have worked on tax reform my entire time in Congress. But if you'd rather just see my skin color, PLS feel free, responded Senator Scott. Liberals seem to like to call people racist a lot. But in reality they are some of the most racist people in existence. Robot Donald Trump is released at Disney World. You'll be shocked by what they have him saying. For a long time there was a debate at Disney on whether or not they would add Donald Trump to the animatronic Hall of Presidents. Liberals created a petition that got over 15,000 signatures to exclude Trump. Donald Trump ran a presidential campaign on hateful speech, misogyny, racism and xenophobia. In doing so, he has tainted the legacy of the American presidency forever, said the petition. The Magic Kingdom at Disney World is a place specifically designed for the enjoyment of children and families. Therefore, it is not an appropriate place for a Donald Trump speech, it said. However, Disney decided to ignore this petition. And the speech they gave to Donald Trump is actually very nice. From the beginning, America has been a nation defined by its people. At our founding, it was the American people who rose up to defend our freedoms and win our independence. It was why our founders began our great Constitution with 3 very simple words: we the people. Since that moment, each generation of Americans has taken its place in the defense of our freedom, our flag, and our nation under God, says Robot Trump. These are the achievements of the American spirit, the spirit of a people who fought and died to bring the blessings of liberty to all our people. Above all, to be an American is to be an optimist, to believe that we can always do better and that the best days of our great nation are still ahead of us. It's a privilege to serve as the President of the United States, to stand here among so many great leaders of our past, and to work on behalf of the American people, says Robot Trump. MSNBC's Malcolm Nance says Fox undermines the Constitution because he thinks they exaggerate. MSNBC has compared President Trump to Hitler, ISIS, Kim Jong-un, slavery, 9/11, and more. They suggest that he is an illegitimate president who wants to hurt Americans. They suggest that his supporters are Nazis and that it is okay to punch Nazis. However, now they are suggesting that Fox News is dangerous because Jesse Watters used the word coup. I'm very concerned about the use of the rhetoric around this. This is almost psychological warfare preparation of the battlefield, that's what we would say. Where they are trying to frame a narrative around the nation now that has a lot more to do than the Mueller investigation, said MSNBC terrorism analyst Malcolm Nance. I mean, if the Mueller investigation comes through, it will have been done by the Department of Justice. They're trying to say that the entire framework of the United States government's system of removing a president or finding out dirt about a president, that in itself is tantamount to a military force or a force removing people in power, he said. We just saw a coup in Zimbabwe recently, where the first thing that happened was the army hits the streets, they seize all the radio and TV stations. I mean, I'm sure that's Fox's worst nightmare, he said. But, this is not a coup, and this language is dangerous. It is, they have a right to free speech, but you know what they don't have a right to? Sedition. They don't have a right to undermine the Constitution of the United States, he said. Jorge Ramos whined he's now having the worst time of his life in America. Univision News anchor Jorge Ramos has evidently not accepted the fact that citizens of his adoptive country democratically elected dynamic outsider Donald Trump to be our president. In a recent Spanish-language interview, Jorge complained that he was having the worst time of his life in America right now because of President Trump. Ramos said on Spanish radio network Cadena Ser that this is the worst moment I've had in the 34 years I've been living in the United States. He continued, angrily, with Donald Trump there, I have never been treated so badly. I have never been insulted so much. We've never been attacked so much, nor have they tried to run us out as much as now. Ramos later called himself if not an enemy, an opponent of Trump and blamed him for somehow making America's social media bad. He said, now the social media networks are terrible. Before if someone wanted to insult you, they had to do it in person or by sending you an anonymous letter. Now they do it through the social media networks and the daily insults. You can enter my Facebook or Twitter and they are there all the time. Jorge also whined about having been kicked out of a Trump event, saying, in the United States, the First Amendment of the Constitution allows you and me, anyone, to say what you want, whether you are a candidate or against a candidate, whatever, the First Amendment protects you. And Donald Trump suddenly ignores the First Amendment and expels me from a press conference violating the First Amendment and puts himself if not at a criminal level, yes in violation of the laws of freedom of speech in the United States. Do you think marginally important Jorge Ramos needs to get over himself? NBC host asked Paul Ryan if he's living in a fantasy world, he crushed her with his answer. Republican House Speaker Paul Ryan recently ventured onto NBC to explain to American viewers what's in the new tax legislation and how it will end up benefiting them. When host Savannah Guthrie tried to insult him by saying he lives in a fantasy world, he quickly fired back with cold, hard truth. Asked liberal Savannah, and by far, the biggest tax cut here, the cut in rate, is going to corporations. As I understand your argument, and that of your colleagues, you're counting on corporations to take that money they now have and plow it right back into the economy, hire people, raise wages. It doesn't work if they don't do that. Is that correct? Rep. Ryan responded, studies show us that that is exactly what does happen, and said about America that we tax American corporations at the highest rate in the industrialized world. Savannah then tried to trap Ryan by quoting billionaire businessman Michael Bloomberg, who said, CEOs aren't waiting on a tax cut to jumpstart the economy, a favorite phrase of politicians who have never run a company, or to hand out raises. It's pure fantasy to think that the tax bill will lead to significantly higher wages and growth. Guthrie then nastily said, I'll ask you plainly, are you living in a fantasy world? Paul swatted away her bottom-feeding insult and replied calmly, surveys would show the vast majority of businesses are going to do just what we say, reinvest in their workers, reinvest in their factories, pay people more money, higher wages. He added, the data is really clear, by the way, workers benefit from this through higher wages. It's not a question of if, it's a question of how much they benefit, is really where this goes. Are you glad Ryan got the final word with this idiot?